Charlie Kirk was killed at an event at Utah Valley University last Wednesday. I doubt this is the first time you're hearing of this news, but this is the first piece of hashtag content that I've created about it, unlike literally every other news commentator alive. So thank you for your patience as I have processed everything over the weekend. I have a lot of thoughts that I don't think I can fit in one video. The pressure to be someone who comments on the news 24/7 is very high in this line of work, but I would actually be completely miserable if I had to make new content about every headline as it comes out. And I like to think that the value I add here is some measured and thoughtful commentary, not breaking news as soon as it happens. So today we're discussing what's happened since the shooting, especially the apparent motives of the shooter and what this means going forward. Kirk was in Orem, Utah for a speaking engagement at Utah Valley University as part of his organization, Turning Point USA's American Comeback Tour, during which he was planning on touring across college campuses, doing speaking events and debates. He was speaking at an open-air event under a tent when a single bullet hit him in the neck. I'm so sorry to those of you who saw that video against your will. That's one of those things that you'll never unsee. Kirk was rushed away in a private vehicle by a security team and died a short while later. After the shooting, 2 different men were detained as people of interest. Photos of the men began circulating online. The FBI and Utah's Public Safety Department issued a joint statement Wednesday night with the full names of both people, a move that is highly unusual. These men were people of interest that had only been detained, not officially arrested for the murder, and threats against these 2 people of interest began immediately because, of course, 𝗏𝗡𝗡𝗘𝗥𝗦 tweeted around 6 p.m. Wednesday night, because we have to get all of our official information from fucking Twitter, that they had apprehended the shooter. And then he went to dinner at Rouse in New York City, a place notoriously difficult to get reservations for, so he couldn't miss that. Then at around 8 p.m. he tweeted, "Oh, actually the person has been released." Meanwhile, Utah authorities said they had a person of interest in custody, but it wasn't clear if it was the same person that Patel was speaking about. It's almost as if the director of the FBI isn't qualified to do his job. Weird. Then Thursday evening, police arrested Tyler Robinson, 22, a native of St. George, Utah, in the southwest corner of the state, on charges of aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm, and obstruction of justice. As of right now, it appears that Robinson is refusing to cooperate or speak with authorities and has not confessed to the murder. Reports are coming out that Robinson's family is staunchly Republican and pro-Trump, and their cooperation, especially of his father, helped lead to his capture. One family member said Robinson had turned more political recently and hated Charlie Kirk. And Robinson's roommate, who has also been alleged to be his partner and has also been alleged to be trans, showed the police messages Robinson had allegedly sent, indicating that he had engraved the bullets and where to find the rifle he had allegedly used. Robinson is registered to vote in the state of Utah, but was unaffiliated with any political party and hasn't voted in the 2 most recent general elections that he was old enough to vote in. Photos of him on social media show him proudly holding guns. So this is a white man from bumfuck Utah with a MAGA family who posts pictures of himself holding guns. 4 of the shell casings had been engraved. The fired shell casing said, "Notices bulges, oh whoa, what's this?" 3 unfired casings said, "Hey fascist, catch upright, down, down, down," and "Oh Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Chow, Chow," and "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO. And yes, we are going to unpack what the fuck that all means. Often, the way news outlets report on a story differs depending on the bias of the publication, and it's hard to know how your own perception of bias influences your interpretation of the news. This headline from NBC News caught my eye. "Charlie Kirk murder suspect linked to crime scene evidence through DNA match," FBI director says. Using the Ground News web browser extension, I can see that in the US, NBC News is considered left-leaning. To get a fuller picture of the story on all sides of the political spectrum, I can click on full coverage, which will show me coverage of the same story from publications across the political spectrum. My partner on today's video, Ground News, uses 3 independent monitoring organizations to assess the bias rating for each publication. Each news monitoring organization has their own methodology, including editorial reviews, blind bias surveys, independent reviews, and third-party research. These are legit independent organizations, but they are limited by the data available to them. Their analysis is done in the context of the US political system. Our Overton window has shifted so far to the right that NBC News is considered left-leaning here. That tells you a lot about the context within which the media you're consuming operates. And thanks to Ground News, I get even more context, including how factual each publication is and who owns it, giving me a well-rounded idea of the motivations, biases, and accuracy of the news I'm consuming. Wouldn't it be great if everyone in America had that much information about the news they consume? Because depending on where you or your family members get the news, you're going to get very different different takes on the same story. This is where Ground News comes in and why I've been using them for over a year. Today's partner, Ground News, is an app and website that offers tools to help you critically analyze the news you read, providing context to understand the full picture. And I feel better equipped to make sense of what's happening in the world without being influenced by just one perspective. And listen, I'm not the only one who loves Ground News. The Nobel Peace Center even called it an excellent way to stay informed, avoid echo chambers, and expand your worldview. I'm always really impressed with Ground News and genuinely think that they're a great resource. So if you want to stay informed on US politics and more, subscribe through this QR code or the link below at ground.news/Leeja for 40% off this unlimited access Vantage plan. It comes to $5 a month for unlimited access to all the features I've mentioned. Thanks, Ground News. The amount of time I had to spend on knowyourmeme.com to get the full scoop on these engravings should indicate to you how deeply and incredibly online Tyler Robinson or whoever did this engraving is, if he is the one who did these engravings, innocent until proven guilty, etc. And I often joke that I'm chronically online because I share a meme or two on Instagram and watch a lot of TikToks, but the level of online that Tyler Robinson seems to be, allegedly, is another level, which is why there is so much confusion about what his motives might have been, which is something the right is taking advantage of, because it's not as straightforward as he's a Democrat or a Republican. The thing with online culture, and especially meme culture, is that most memes have so many layers and layers of meaning to them. You can write them off if you want as just meaningless internet fluff, but the amount of subtext you have to understand to grasp a meme is very difficult to explain to someone who doesn't have the context, because having to explain it makes it lose some of its meaning, because memes are meant to be a funny wink and nod to the people who get it. It's meant to show membership of a group, even if it's broad or not a defined group on any chat forum anywhere. It could reference an obscure part of a cult classic TV show or a song lyric from an artist that only true fans would get the reference to, and so on and so on. You're not supposed to get a meme if you don't understand what it's referencing. And the engraving on the bullet that killed Charlie Kirk is a great example of this. Again, it reads, "Notices bulges, oh whoa, what's this?" The meme this is likely referencing was first posted on Imgur, an image hosting website, in June 2015. That meme was then shared by a user on Tumblr in July 2015. Tumblr is a website. Do you see how difficult it is to explain to a boomer who's convinced Tyler Robinson is a leftist lunatic? There's so many layers. Please stick with me. Tumblr is a social media website that was very popular in the 2010s and has regained popularity with Gen Z, where people share writing and images and other people can comment and reshare the writing and images, and a lot of sub-communities have grown as part of Tumblr. I mainly used it in high school and college to share aesthetic photos and corny quotes, but I remember it being particularly notorious for circling things like thin inspiration photos to motivate people to lose weight. Let's not go too far down that rabbit hole. Okay, so this is the meme that the engraving was likely referencing. If you're listening to the podcast version, it is two kind of gross looking, presumably male humans in a cut screen looking at their computers and typing, apparently in conversation with each other. One of the men has ears and the other has a paw print tattoo. Both are sweating profusely for some reason. The man with the ears says, "Hee hee, you're a cutie," flops beside you and nuzzles. And the second guy replies, "Aw," nuzzles you back and pounces on you and notices your bulge. Oh, whoa, what's this? I hate that I had to just read that out loud. The context that you need to understand is the online furry community and the subsequent mockery of said community. Furries are people who dress up like animals and identify as animals. You will often see them walking around town with a little tail hanging out of their pants. They have conventions. It's a whole thing. In online furry communities, the way they speak to each other tends to be overly cutesy and very cringy, and they use a lot of cutesy emoticons. An emoticon is like an emoji, a little face, but often using letters and numbers instead of the little yellow icon you find on your iPhone keyboard. The number 3 and the letter W tend to mimic a mouth. An O is a wide open eye. A U is a calmly closed eye. An X is tightly closed eyes. You can see what I mean in this meme on the left where he says, "Hee hee, you're a cutie, X3." The X3 is an emoticon. The X is tightly closed eyes. The 3 is a coy little smile. OWO, OWO, is also an emoticon meant to show surprise, with the O's, 2 large open eyes, and the W, a little surprised mouth. Oh, whoa. So they talk to each other in a way that is cutesy and cringe, and they will often do role playing. For as long as the internet has been around, if you want to indicate an action as opposed to actual spoken words in a chat scenario, you put an asterisk on either side. So the meme says, asterisk, flops beside you and nuzzles, asterisk. That is meant to be read as an action. Similarly, asterisk, nuzzles you back and pounces on you and notices your bulge, asterisk, is all meant to denote an action. In this way, they can kind of simulate role playing in text form. And furries furries are apparently notorious for the sexually driven nature of some of their forums or the way that they speak to each other sometimes. So, oh, whoa, what's this? Indicates a surprise face and a question. What is this? This meme circulated, and oh whoa, what's this became general internet speak that was typically used to make fun of the cutesy, cringy, often strange nature of the communication styles of online furry communities. It's just meant to be kind of dumb. So while you have to get a ton of context in order to understand the meme and the reference to it engraved on the shell casing with notices, bulges, oh whoa, what's this, at the end of the day, there isn't deep meaning to it. It's all a shitpost, a troll move. It's just meant to be dumb. And that's the nature of a lot of memes. You have to know a lot of subtext to understand what amounts to kind of a dumb joke. The next casing read, "Hey fascist, catch," with an up arrow, a right arrow, and 3 down arrows next to it. To understand this, you'd need to be a member of a particular gaming subculture, or at least generally familiar with gamer chat forums. The specific game in question is called Helldivers 2. It came out in February of last year and involves teams of people fighting off invading insect, alien, and robot armies. The trailer for the Helldivers 2 game is quite purposely meant to look like a US Army recruitment video.
Prove to yourself that you have the strength and the courage to be free. Join the Helldivers. Become part of an elite peacekeeping force and work together to spread prosperity, liberty, and democracy.
And while it is delivered in a tongue-in-cheek manner, it's also earnestly meant to draw gamers into this idea that you are spreading democracy and peace by killing the fuck out of everything around you. In one gameplay video, you can hear a player yelling, "How do you like the taste of freedom?" as he's launching what appear to be bazookas. I don't know about weapons.
How do you like the taste of freedom?
In this game, if you're in the middle of a battle, you can call in backup or reinforcements. One way to do that is by hitting the up arrow on your game controller, followed by the right arrow, and then 3 down arrows. The down arrow 3 times. That will call in the Eagle 500 kg bomb, which deals a ton of damage to one small area. And within gaming communities, that series of arrows, up, right, down, 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 became a euphemism for dropping a bomb on something or destroying it. For example, in response to a post of a picture of a giant spider on the side of a house that says, "How would you react in this situation?" someone responded, "I would up, right, down, down, down." It's like a verb. So with that context, we can better understand the engraving on the shell casing that said, "Hey fascist, catch," up, right, down, down, down. It comes from a game which advocates for defending freedom through warfare, including using up, right, down, down, down to drop a bomb on your enemy. Now, I'm not interested in sitting here and saying that like video games cause very specific behaviors because of their violence. I think that's old school, weird, pearl clutching rhetoric. But given this context, I don't think we can say that the engraving, "Hey fascist," is necessarily because Robinson, if he did do this engraving, was left of Charlie Kirk and calling him a fascist because he's a liberal. This could perhaps better be understood as someone who played video games and became a member of a gaming community steeped in this pro-war, pro-America spreads democracy ideology, the kind where Hitler and Nazis are used as convenient go-to antagonists to advance a plot in a game. Or it could be genuine criticism of Kirk from a leftist perspective. We don't know, but I don't think it is given the other stuff I'm talking about today. This understanding of these two engravings gives us a better context to then look at the third engraving, which says, "Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao," which in Italian means goodbye beautiful, but is referencing lyrics from an Italian folk song that took on meaning as an anti-fascist song of resistance across the globe.
Oh, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao.
The song also appears in the soundtrack to a video game called Far Cry 6, which takes place in a made-up country ruled by a dictator and is associated with a revolutionary rebel song against the tyrannical dictator who plays the main villain in the game. The song also appears in a recent Spanish TV show called Money Heist. It's first sung by 2 of the protagonists as they plan their money heist, which they interpret as, quote, "an act of resistance against a system that has held them down," according to The Hollywood Reporter. It was a, quote, rallying cry for the show's merry band of thieves. A remix of the song called El Profesor Bella Ciao, huge L remix, appears on a Spotify playlist called Groyper Wars America First, which brings us to the final piece of the deeply online puzzle of context you need to know to try to decipher what this all means. What the fuck is a Groyper? And you guessed it, more internet lore backstory is necessary to understand this term. We start with Pepe the Frog. Pepe was a cartoon character in a comic series called Boys Club created in 2005. Pepe's face with the words "feels good, man" started circulating around 2008 on 4chan, an image-sharing forum that is notorious for having harbored some of the most vile shit you can find on the internet. Variations of the Pepe meme were created as reaction emojis for various emotions like sad frog, smug frog, angry Pepe, and so on. In 2015, users began creating a variation of smug Pepe as Donald Trump, which Trump eventually retweeted. The media latched on to Pepe the Frog as a popular white nationalist symbol because of the use of smug Pepe as Trump and the circulation of the Pepe meme generally amongst alt-right groups online, even though the Pepe meme and its variations had been around for years, and Pepe the Frog wasn't inherently exclusively used online by far-right communities, but this created a fervor around the use of the meme generally to where it became a far-right symbol because no one wanted to use it anymore for fear of getting called out and canceled. The mainstream media was roundly mocked on internet forums for being out of touch and unaware of the Pepe the Frog lore. And during this time, a variation of Pepe the Frog was created wherein Pepe is very obese, has his hands folded under his chin, and is giving you a smug little smirk. According to KnowYourMeme.com, the earliest known variation of this version of Pepe appeared on 4chan in 2016. It's unknown when that variation was given the name Groyper and what the word Groyper actually means. The hypotheses that I could find included that it is a combination of goy, meaning a non-Jewish person, and griper, someone who complains. Could be a weird alteration of the word groper, or it could mean absolutely nothing at all, which most things in internet subcultures tend to do. The term groyper was first used separate from the Pepe drawing in a 4chan board called R9K in 2015. That board is dedicated to anonymous sharing of personal anecdotes of social awkwardness, especially used by boys and men with active disdain for other men with active social, professional, and sexual lives. Many of the discussions surrounded relationships, or lack thereof, with women, and despite their grievances, they took pride in their position, lobbing hate at so-called normies who don't understand their culture and calling for a beta uprising. So the origin of Groyper may be incel-inspired. By 2019, as Pepe the Frog became increasingly associated with the far right, so too did the Groyper, with many users ascribing to far-right ideologies using the Groyper as their social media profile photo. Groyper became the symbol of the so-called Groyper Army, a subset of the super alt-right or new right that spewed white nationalist, neo-Nazi hate concerned primarily with preserving the white race. Groyper Army hecklers began showing up IRL at conservative speaker events, basically staging a live trolling of people like Ben Shapiro and Donald Trump Jr., taking issue with the Republican Party's acceptance of LGBTQ speakers, for example, or Ben Shapiro because he's Jewish. To the Groyper Army, the far-right Republicans weren't far-right enough, and their de facto leader is Nick Fuentes, a far-right influencer who gained notoriety around 2020 when he was about 20 years old for things like praising Hitler. Charlie Kirk was a favorite target of the Groyper Army for not being conservative enough. For example, his support of Israel went against Groyper anti-Semitism. So you've got the Groyper Army fighting against other far-right conservatives for not being far-right enough. But another key to understanding the ideology behind the Groyper Army is in more internet speak, of course, which is the idea of being red-pilled versus black-pilled. This refers to the Matrix movie wherein the protagonist is asked to choose between taking two pills, one of which will show him the true nature of the world and of society. And to incels and other radicalized people on the internet, being red-pilled means the wool has been pulled back from their eyes and they see what's really going on here. Whether it's the evils of feminism or the deep state, these mostly young boys have really figured it out. In the context of Charlie Kirk, calling him red-pilled is a negative in Groyper circles. It's a criticism that he's part of the establishment, that he's working to dismantle the current system in order to build something else, something he thinks is better. Instead, Nick Fuentes and his Groyper Army are black-pilled, meaning there is no meaning. Chaotic evil. It's the ultimate form of internet-based nihilism, enacted by mostly young men who are mad at a system that they feel oppresses them and wants to engage in acts to watch the whole world burn. This is also called accelerationism, causing chaos for chaos's sake, to watch it all crumble, not to build back something better, but just for the joy of watching it crumble and of the power that comes from destroying everything. It's like the ultimate iteration of what I can only imagine is deep anger, hatred, loneliness, self-loathing, and isolation that someone would have to feel to come to these types of conclusions. But of course, it's still unclear whether or not Robinson or whoever engraved those bullets is actually part of the Groyper Army, because a single song in a Spotify playlist isn't exactly damning evidence. What is clear is that this person was deeply on online. And now, because of how enticing this nihilism is and how many young men have become radicalized on the internet, how genuinely influential these far-right chat boards have become, I had to spend hours on knowyourmeme.com and explain all this bullshit to you so that we all understand the context. But the greatest trick that the shooter has played is not in making some sort of statement about the world or politics or having some meaning behind his actions. It's actually the opposite. All this context is necessary to understand that it is very possible that this murder had actually no meaning at all. It was the equivalent of a violent IRL shitpost, trolling to the extreme, an absolutely senseless killing in the most literal way, which is made more clear by the final casing, the one engraved, "If you are reading this, you are gay, LMAO." That one doesn't really require any context as far as I know beyond what I've already talked about. It's all a joke. Much like the memes themselves, it requires a lot of context and deep understanding of internet lore, only to come out the other side and realize that to the shooter, it's just a stupid joke. This isn't a clear Luigi-style murder with a motive and a larger message. Even if Robinson is the shooter and even if he didn't agree with Kirk's politics, he did not use the assassination as an attempt to communicate any clear, larger political message other than the same nod and wink to online subculture that your average meme provides. And that, I think, is the most sinister aspect of all of this, that there was no meaning at all, that this was simply done to create chaos by someone so nihilistic they just want to watch the world burn. And there are a lot of men like him out there. That's where we've arrived. And I do not grieve the death of Charlie Kirk. I hate living in a world where gun violence is so prevalent and where political violence is becoming normalized, but this is the world Charlie Kirk helped to create through his hateful rhetoric and through his belief that gun violence was a worthy price to pay in exchange for having guns. Kirk truly died for a cause he believed in, guns, and we are all left now to live in the world he helped create, in the communities torn apart by gun violence, even after the headlines stop rolling in. I live in Minneapolis. Believe me, we have not moved on from the Annunciation shooting or the murders of Melissa and Mark Hortman killed in their homes earlier this summer. To Kirk, that is a worthy price to pay so that we can all walk into a Walmart and buy an AR-15 whenever we want. Kirk was a hugely influential figure, especially among young people, especially in his friendship with Trump. Numerous people associated with Kirk and his Turning Points USA organization are currently walking the halls of the White House. So I caution any underestimation of the level of influence he had on the current climate in this country. And now we have to live with that. And that is infuriating. So I don't mourn his death. I mourn the reality that his life created for all of us, and the reality that his assassination has now created. Immediately after news of Kirk's death circulated, Trump made a national address. It openly blamed far-left lunatics for Kirk's death, despite the fact that there was no suspect in custody and no information about motive. It took the regime quite literally zero time to see how easily this could be spun into a propaganda factory, to go after anyone who disagrees with Trump's ideology under the pretext that it was leftists generally who killed Kirk. Because even if leftists didn't pull the trigger, the idea is that leftist talking points created the violence that led to his death. Trump said it himself in a recent interview, saying that right-wing violence is actually done by people who just desperately wish that there was less crime, while leftist violence is evil and sinister.
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem.
This is, of course, contrary to all data we have about extremist violence in this country, which is committed by both the left and right, to be sure, but is far more prevalent on the right. According to both the Anti-Defamation League and the Cato Institute, right-wing extremists are responsible for the great majority of extremist-related murders over the last decade. Of the 429 deaths from 2015 to 2024 related to domestic extremism, 76% were related to right-wing extremism, while 4% were related to left-wing extremism. It's not even close. Left-wing extremists tend to enact violence against property as opposed to people, which is called terrorism by the right, of course, but which obviously results in far fewer deaths. But of course, those statistics do not matter. The truth has never mattered to Trump or the people running the government in his shadow. So long as an event can be used to further their own ideology, the truth doesn't matter. And that's exactly what's happening with the death of Charlie Kirk. Trump has pledged that a huge investigation is already underway into the leftists who caused Kirk's death. Again, what leftists? It's unclear. Even if the alleged shooter did ascribe to leftist ideology, it's not been alleged that he acted with anyone. But again, that doesn't matter. Stephen Miller is, of course, salivating at the fucking mouth. Him and J.D. Vance hosted today's episode of Charlie Kirk's show, during which Miller vowed to dismantle and destroy the far-left domestic terror movement that he claims led to Kirk's death. Again, what domestic terror movement? That doesn't matter. The stats don't matter. The numbers don't matter. The shooter's actual affiliations or motivations don't matter. Miller is convinced, or at least wants to convince everyone else, of a vast, organized, leftist domestic terror movement, which is fucking laughable to anyone actually on the left. Like, organized? Get real. What organized leftist movement? I wish there was an organized leftist movement in this country. According to Miller, though, they're conducting organized doxing campaigns, organized riots, organized street violence, organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging designed to trigger, incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate that violence. If I were to pull that quote out of context, you'd think he was talking about the right, about the Groyper Army, perhaps about libs of TikTok and Laura Loomer, who since the moment of Kirk's death have been targeting and doxing everyone who made a post on social media that wasn't sufficiently mournful of Charlie Kirk's death, inciting their followers to contact those people's employers, usually targeting teachers and government workers. Many people with zero internet following have lost their jobs in the last week at the hands of libs of TikTok and Laura Loomer and their trolls who've compiled a website called Charlie's Murderers, which as far as I could tell has been taken down, but for the days after the murder was listing the names and personal details of private individuals for posting or tweeting the wrong thing about Charlie Kirk. But Stephen Miller is, of course, not talking about any of that. He's talking about the imaginary leftist insurgency, the well-organized leftist army that's just waiting in the wings to bring chaos to all the red-blooded, God-fearing citizens of this great nation. Honey, literally me and what army? You know, half of us are so neurodivergent we can't remember why we entered the room at any given moment. We're organizing what now? In that same show, J.D. Vance made comments that shed light on what the administration is likely going to do next. He lamented an article published in The Nation, which he said mischaracterized Kirk's views, stating it is funded by George Soros's Open Society Foundation as well as Ford Foundation and, quote, many other wealthy titans of the American progressive movement, lamenting that those organizations are largely tax exempt. So the initial steps at least appear to be to go after the likely suspects, George Soros, for example, and shut down their tax exempt status like they've threatened to do with universities. And this makes sense. It's like the final boss version of the Powell memo. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I made a whole episode about it. Basically, it's the blueprint telling American conservatives and businesses to take over universities, create think tanks to lend credence to their crackpot right-wing views, and take over the media. They haven't stopped there, though, because they've pretty much done all of that now. So the obvious next step is to dismantle whatever non-right-wing institutions that still exist. They started with universities, they defunded PBS and NPR, and now is their opportunity to go after the think tanks and institutions that create the research that makes them look so bad because it's based in like truth and science and other bullshit. Once that's gone, there will be no more experts coming out of the universities, there will be no more studies and fact-checking proving them wrong, and there will be no media left to report on the studies anyway. So I don't think that this is the moment the Trump regime is going to start targeting individual leftists beyond what they're already doing to pro-Palestinian advocates who aren't native-born Americans. To be clear, I think that's coming. I do, but I don't think that we're quite there yet. I think they'll start with the major institutions. It's a lot easier when they can just revoke tax-exempt status, and it's honestly a lot more effective than targeting individuals at this point. But once the non-right-wing foundations and think tanks have been stripped or bent the knee, I don't see why they'd stop there. A provision was introduced into a larger State Department reorganization bill in the House that would have given Marco Rubio the right to revoke or refuse passports to people deemed to have materially supported terrorists, code word for being pro-Palestine. That provision has luckily been struck from the bill, but it certainly doesn't leave you feeling warm and fuzzy inside that there are lawmakers gunning for Marco Rubio to be given that power, ostensibly including the right to strip citizens and people born here of their passports. And I think that the terrorism link is essential. They can't revoke a person's tax-exempt status, that doesn't exist, but they can accuse a person of materially aiding terrorism because they're pro-Palestine and condemn the genocide in Gaza, which the government has already indicated it equates to being pro-Hamas, and they will do their darndest to try to argue that saying pro-Palestinian things is the same as providing material support to Hamas even though it isn't. So all of this to say, the motives of the alleged shooter are still really opaque, but analysis of the evidence we do have indicates a fucked up individual deeply steeped in internet culture, if nothing else. And Charlie Kirk's death has done nothing but turn up the heat a few notches here in America, especially in the rhetoric coming out of the White House from Trump and Vance and Miller, making it very clear that no matter what comes out about the killer, they're going to use this to push their right-wing ideology further down all of our throats. If you want the joy of supporting independent media, consider clicking the big join button here on YouTube for early access to my videos, or joining my Patreon community at patreon.com/LeejaMiller, where you will find all of these videos completely ad-free. And thank you to my multi-platinum patrons Mark, Sarah Shelby, Art, David, RH, Latranger, Lucas, Thomas Johnson, and Tay. Your generosity makes this channel what it is, so thank you. And if you like this episode, you like the one from last week about the Supreme Court upholding racial profiling. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.